Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in 1 minute. That should give you enough time to grab a snack or a coffee. If you want, feel free to drop in the chat where you're calling in from today. Ooh, Victoria, BC. St. Albert, hello from Alberta. Saskatoon. Ooh, Halifax. A couple from Calgary, Ontario. Wonderful. If you're just joining us, we're going to get started here shortly. If you want, drop in the chat where you're calling in from so we can see how far we're reaching today. Look at that. Ooh, Montreal. Wonderful. Oh, look at everybody's chats. We're going to get started. So welcome to the Your Life After Cancer Conference. Throughout the week, you will be treated to interactive presentations and expert-approved tools, tips, and recommendations to help you find your own path to a fulfilling life after blood cancer or with chronic blood cancer. The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada is proud to introduce today's presentation titled Surviving and Thriving with and Beyond Cancer, a Guide to Rebuilding Your Life. Once you finish treatment for your cancer, you might struggle with isolation, distress, and anxiety. How you manage these challenges and make a successful transition to a life after cancer. In this session, Dr. Linda Watson, Scientific Director of Applied Research and Patient Experience with Cancer Care Alberta, will explore the impact of a cancer diagnosis and treatment and will provide ideas and strategies to help you cope. Let me introduce myself. My name is Desiree Naylor, and I am a Community Services Lead with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada here in Alberta. I will be the moderator of this online event. Since there are many of you, we invite you to type your questions and comments in the question box of your Zoom webinar panel throughout the presentation. An LLSC staff member will monitor the questions. I will read some of the questions aloud at the end of the presentation during the question and answer period. Today's presentation will be recorded. Therefore, you can listen to it again on our website. Next slide, please. At the LLSC, our mission is to cure blood cancers and improve the quality of life of those touched by blood cancer and their families. We offer support to those affected by blood cancer throughout the blood cancer experience. Do not hesitate to contact the Community Services Lead in your area to learn more. Next slide. As you've surely heard, we launched our new website, bloodcancers.ca, last November in 2021. Our goal is to better serve the community and offer an improved experience. On our website, you will find all of our past webcasts, our podcast channel, information sheets, practical tools to help you navigate the cancer experience, and so much more. You can visit www.bloodcancers.ca. Next slide. You will also find a section for survivors and people affected by chronic cancer with different tools to help you adapt to this new normal, tips on how to deal with mental health problems or side effects. You can read testimonials from cancer survivors who have found new meaning in their lives. We invite you to read their stories. Next slide, please. It's now time to begin today's presentation, Surviving and Thriving with and Beyond Cancer, a Guide to Rebuilding Your Life. Next slide. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Linda Watson. Dr. Watson has been an oncology nurse in Calgary, Alberta for over 30 years. She has held a variety of nursing and interprofessional leadership roles with the Cancer Control Alberta provincial program and currently holds 2 scientific director positions with CCA. One as the acting scientific director of cancer research and analytics, as well as her permanent role as the scientific director, applied research and patient experience. Dr. Watson also holds an adjunct professor position with the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary and is also a past president of the Canadian Association of Nurses in Oncology, CANO. She is currently serving a 4-year term on the board of directors for the International Society for Nurses in Cancer Care. Thank you, Dr. Watson, for being here today. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. It's always weird to hear my own bio because it sounds bigger than who I am. I'm just a nurse who wants to make a difference for cancer patients in Canada. So I'm really glad to be here today. So as mentioned, my background really, I have done a lot of work in this space of caring for cancer patients, and I've done both my master's and my PhD research around cancer as a chronic disease and living with and beyond cancer. So when I got the invitation to come and talk to you today, I was really, really pleased to be able to join you and share what I've learned over the years and some strategies to help make the best of your life. So today on the screen, you can see what we're going to go through in sections. So I'm going to start with really focusing in on how cancer arrives in our lives, and it's always unexpected. Coming to terms with that reality that you never thought was going to be a reality, how to adapt, like focusing in on adapting and coping with that reality, talking about some common challenges that many people who are living with and beyond cancer experience and some strategies for that, and then focusing up, pulling together all the commonalities across all of that and focusing in on some tangible strategies that you can take to make the best of what you fought so hard for, is to live longer. So that is where our topics are going to be, and then we'll conclude with a question and answer period and discussion, and I am happy to answer any questions along the way. So please put, as Desiree said, put those in the chat box. So let's get going. So cancer is always unexpected, and I think this is one of the places to really situate our talk today, is that nobody makes plans ahead of time for the day that they're going to get told that they are facing a cancer diagnosis. And that makes dealing with this life-altering event very, very difficult, because it's not something you're prepared for ever. And it can happen to anyone. And I think no matter how you live your life or what you do to minimize your risks of getting cancer, there's no way to know for sure that you or someone you love won't get cancer in a lifetime. And so I think it's this wild card that is in the deck of cards that we live with, and it can arrive. And it does. And when it arrives, it really can disrupt everything about the way we thought our life was going to be. So as I said, people don't prepare to have cancer. It's disruptive when you get a diagnosis, and that diagnosis appears regardless of what else is going on in your life. And when it arrives, it demands your full attention. And so, when I talk with cancer patients about this experience, they often speak of the fact that, like, my whole life changed in an instant. Like, everything I thought I was going to have in the future is just all of a sudden different than I thought it was going to be. And that there's a grief in that as well, that we don't give enough credit to how difficult it is to have the future be different than we anticipated it to be, and then the work of recreating a new future, given whatever the outcomes of the treatments are. So moving forward, so as I said on the previous slide, it's always unexpected. You don't choose it. It arrives when it arrives, and it is something that demands attention. So the first challenge you face is really like actually coming to terms with that reality. And again, I think nobody comes to term with it easily. It is a reluctant process. It's a difficult coming to terms and facing what you need to face, and wishing it was different doesn't make it different than what it is. And so, I think nobody ever wants to have to go through this. Nobody wants to face having to go for cancer treatments. Sometimes I've talked with cancer patients, and when we're telling them what kind of treatments they need to take to manage their disease or to treat it effectively, the side effects sound worse than how they're feeling right at the beginning when they're kind of facing the reality that they have to deal with this cancer. And so often it's a very difficult time at the beginning of this journey to understand what options and how to make good decisions. So what we do know, though, is without treatment, cancer as a general disease will continue, and it will progress in either slow fashion or quickly. And ultimately, if we don't do something at the right moments that your medical team advises you, you will get sicker with the disease. So ultimately, everyone who faces cancer deals with these realities that come along with the diagnosis. So you can't put up the white flag and choose a different path once the cancer has arrived. So really, how do we accept those things that we can't change and make the best of these moments? I think this quote comes from, I think it was from my master's thesis research. And this was a myeloma patient and who was living with multiple myeloma. And she said, when I was first diagnosed, the first thing I wished for was a cure. And then if I can't have a cure, then I want more time. And I think that this has really been a seminal quote that I've come back to so many times through my work, is that this sums up pretty much the experience of every cancer patient. Like, our first hope is that the treatment we're on is going to get rid of the cancer and deliver us to a reality in the future where the cancer is no longer needing active management. But for some people, that's not possible. And in that case, we hope for more time. So we want treatments that can control the disease progression, control the symptoms, give us good quality of life, and help us live longer. And I think that's what our talk is about today. So I don't know everybody's story who's on the call, but some of you will be in the after treatment phase of living beyond a cancer diagnosis, and some of you will be trying to live well with a cancer that is still actively being managed in that chronic phase. And so everything that is in this presentation is really speaking to both audiences, because there's nothing specific to how to live a good life after a cancer diagnosis that is only for one population or the other. So I did want to just say that we are in the space that has never been before. So we are living in an era where there are more treatment options than ever and better outcomes than ever. So I think back to when I started oncology nursing 30 years ago, and there was maybe one or two treatment options for cancers, and of many types. There wasn't a lot of different options. And many times it was like, well, if we can't cure this, then we were moving into comfort care and palliation. And now, over the last, I think it's been about 20 years since they've mapped the human genome and came up with targeted therapies and all of the new treatment options that are in the world now, that are really showing us that people can live with cancer for a long time in an active state, that we can control the progression, we can kind of slow that cancer down so it's just in a static state, not getting worse. But it's because of these treatments. So you're not totally cured in many situations, but if you stay on treatments and you manage all of the ongoing needs of going for those treatments, we actually can quite effectively control the progression of cancer. So multiple myeloma is a great example. 25 years ago, multiple myeloma was a disease that people lived 2 to 3 years with because there wasn't that many treatment options. And now multiple myeloma is something people can live 7-10 more years because of the options. So as weird as it is to say, if there was ever a time point in the history of cancer treatments that, to get a cancer diagnosis, we are in the best place that we've ever been in terms of options to treat and control cancer. And that is leading to us needing to have more conversations around how do I live well with and beyond cancer. So in essence, this whole conversation of what we're going to talk about today is emerging out of the reality that we're helping more and more people live longer and living beyond their cancer diagnosis. So although I am not speaking about medical drug treatments in this talk today, I think underlying all the things we're going to talk about is really the reality that without the medical advancements of research and new drug therapies, we wouldn't be having all of these conversations. So what can you do when you have to accept these realities? And I know most of you may have already come to terms with, the fact that cancer is in your world, but I thought to make this talk make most sense, we needed to touch on those pieces in the beginning, because I know one of the big pieces for our cancer survivors is we often can find purpose in our own experience by helping others. And so hopefully there are things in my talk today that can help you when you're talking to other people who are at the beginning of their cancer journey, because I think that it takes a village to help people get through cancer. And by being someone living with and beyond cancer, you can be part of helping someone else figure out how to make their way through this journey. So it's scary. Cancer is the most feared disease in our society, but there are things that can help. So number one of the most important things I tell to my patients is that you need a family doctor who you can count on. So even though you have a good oncologist and a cancer care team, having a family doctor in your corner to help navigate the long journey of your care needs, both the impact of cancer, but other diseases that you are probably managing alongside with it, is super important. In fact, in the cancer program in Alberta, we just did a big survey around patient experience. And one of the questions we added to our survey asked the patients to report how involved their family doctor has been in the last 6 months of their cancer treatment journey. And what we found was only about 25% of patients said they had a very involved family doctor. And so this isn't just hematology patients, this is all cancer patients. So 25% of patients said they had a very involved family doctor. And if we looked at how satisfied they were with all domains of their care across their cancer journey, the patients who had a very involved family doctor were statistically more satisfied in every domain of care, regardless of any other differences other than they had a family doctor that was part of their care team and quarterbacking their journey. And so the first recommendation I make to any patient who is newly diagnosed or at any point in the journey is make sure you develop a relationship with a family doctor who can help stick handle all the things that come at us through the life when you're living with cancer. Second point is build a good relationship with your oncology team. So, often if you think about healthcare and acute hospitalizations and going to the hospital and having a surgery or something like that, it's an acute incident. So you have something that goes wrong, you go in, you have this surgery, you meet a surgeon, they care for you, and then you recover, and you may never need to see that surgeon or have much interaction with the surgeon again because they've done what they need to do. Whereas when we're in the space of blood cancers, surgery isn't really the way we deal with that. It's really about care over time. And so this idea that you need a relationship with your care team because they are part of the lifeline between you and the best outcomes, because it is about treatment and management and surveillance, that relationship and knowing you and you knowing them is so very important. So trying to understand and keep that relationship with your oncology team and understanding what they need from you and being clear with them about what you need from them. Those are definitely the two big parts at the beginning that is super important for people to understand. And then the third part is about taking an active role in the management of your disease. So I would say that everybody who has arrived at this session today and any of the other sessions that have been hosted by the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada, you are taking a very good next step about being an active role in understanding your disease, and being a partner in your care team. So you need to be knowledgeable about what's going on for you. There's a whole new language that you have to learn once you become a cancer patient, a blood cancer patient, in specific like blood counts that you never even knew existed. All of a sudden you need to understand that, and you need to understand what that means for you. And the better you can do that and understand how the language that your care teams are using around you, the better you're able to participate. Big caution, though, is to use the internet carefully. And I don't know if any of you who have had this experience have had the experience that there is so much information on the internet, and it can be like going down a rabbit hole. It can be scary. It can be overwhelming. It can be unverified. It sounds like it's good information, but then when you start to ask other people about it, you realize it's not evidence-based, or it's not researched. It's someone's opinion. It's hard to understand how these things all play together. And so I think that I don't have real clear answers on how to do that, but to ensure that you are going to reputable sites, like the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, like Canadian Cancer Society, like national websites that have reputable information, is really, really an important thing to know, that you can get into a lot of questionable information when we just start Googling straight up on the internet about around diseases like this. So obviously participating in classes and workshops if you have time and energy, and I absolutely know that fatigue is such a real part of when you are dealing with cancer and its treatments. So definitely, I think COVID has brought us some benefits in that classes and workshops are now online, and people can participate from their home so that they don't have to make a trip to the cancer center to sit in an uncomfortable chair. You can sit in your own comfortable space and participate in whatever level that you're able to. Ask good questions. So I always encourage my cancer patients to write a list and think about what do they need to get out of their next encounter with their care team, and to know that that is your right to ask questions, and the care team needs to either address them with you in person or agree to another strategy where you can email them or talk about this on the telephone if they don't have time in the clinic appointment. So making sure that you are thinking about what do I need to achieve in my next encounter with my care team, and making lists about that. So those are some of the really tangible things at the beginning that I always try and coach my cancer patients on, in terms of okay, so this is now where you are, and these are some of the things that will help you get through this next phase as well as possible. So next we're going to talk about adapting and coping, which is more in the living with space. So I think when you have a cancer diagnosis, it is isolating. And I heard this over and over in my own research, both in my master's and my PhD research, when I interviewed cancer patients and their family members, is that because so many of our symptoms that you experience, like fatigue, like fear of reoccurrence, and we're going to talk about some of those other things, they aren't things that are physically manifested on the outside of your body. It's hard for family and friends to really understand what is going on inside of you and how you're feeling. And it's people say to me, if I looked sick, if I had big sores all over my face, people, my friends would be like, oh, you're not doing well. Like, you don't look like you're doing well. What can I do to help? But the idea that lots of these challenges and symptoms are things that are private. They are happening inside of you. They're affecting your energy. They're affecting your ability to sleep. They're affecting your ability to eat. You're not feeling like you can eat, so you don't have the energy. All of these things, they're impossible for other people to actually see as how you present yourself in the world. And so open and honest communication about how you feel, what you're going through, is the only way for others to truly know what you're going through. However, there is a tendency in cancer patients that I heard through my research is that there is actually an energy to protect others. I don't want my family to worry about me. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be a complainer. I don't want to have to tell people every time, no, I can't. I don't have the energy to do the thing you just invited me to do, because it's hard. It reminds me every time they bring something up that I have to remind them that I'm not feeling that well. And so I think that it's a tricky reality in that creating these open channels for communication is tricky, because you actually do need to let people into how you're doing. But the other side of what I heard is that it also is isolating for the family, because they're worried about you too, but they don't want to stress you out, and they don't want to put more on your plate because they're worried, and they don't want you to know they're worried. And so there's these brave faces on both sides of this experience that actually can create a doubled isolation, because you're trying to protect your family and your friends and being brave, and they're trying to protect you of their fears and worries, and they don't want to, take something for granted. And so I think that it isn't a space that anyone can tell you how to navigate, but I think being aware that there are two dynamics going on at the same time that can be both isolating, so that ultimately, if you can't create open communication, you end up with more isolation in both sides of this relationship. So I think the best piece there is to really try to have those conversations and think about your role as an educator. I brought that up at the beginning. You're attending this workshop, and not only to understand how you yourself can live about the best you can, but also how you can help others get through this or understand the experience. And so I know, as an oncology nurse, I have stepped into the role as an educator in my own personal life many, many times, because so many people just don't understand cancer. They just don't get it. They don't understand. They're like, oh yeah, but you had surgery 3 years ago. Why are you still not well? It's like, well, I've been on treatment ever since. And people just don't understand it. So I think being patient and trying your best, but at some point you also have to protect yourself because you're all tired. So it's really a tricky space, but it's worthwhile trying to understand how to create the support you need. But truly, one of the key messages I want to ensure everybody on this call knows is that you're not alone. And I say this and I tell patients right at the beginning of their journey, you're not alone. You have more people around you that care than you realize. And that part of this space of open communication is really enabling and encouraging you to ask for what you need. And that's not something many of us are comfortable with, because we define ourselves as strong, independent, able to cope, able to manage. Like, we may never have been in a place of needing support from others like we do once we're in a cancer journey. But again, you didn't pick it. You didn't get to choose when it arrived, and you don't get to choose how it disrupts your life. And so, that is an important balance between accepting that and then being able to ask for the support or look for the support you need. So definitely reach out, ask for help, and talk to others. And there is lots of resources out there. Like I've been seeing in the chat box, there's some Facebook support groups, there's support groups through the Cancer Agency, there's places like Wellspring where you can go and talk to other people who are on a similar experience. And really, on many people in your cancer journey find support from other people with cancer because they have a similar experience, not the same as yours, but they understand it in a way that other people who haven't experienced cancer understand it. And that is often why these kind of networks, like the one that we're in today, are so valuable for helping us get through what we need to, because there's a common experience involved. The next piece I want to just touch on is this idea that I brought up earlier about becoming knowledgeable. And this really is so important to take the time to understand your disease, its treatment, and how having that, learning the language, learning what it is that the doctor is going to look at every time that you come to see them. What blood counts are they talking about? What does that mean? What is the purpose of that part of my blood makeup? What does this do versus that? Why is that something that we need to track? What happens when it gets high? What's the risk for me? I mean, obviously, those are all really, really important that enable you to ask good questions, to have good conversations, to participate in clinical conversations to the best of your ability. And I think that's a super important part of your commitment to your own journey. But also really knowing that another piece of knowledgeable is understanding that when your doctor or your prescriber does give you medications to take, that you need to do the best you can to take the medications as prescribed. And if you're having problems, you need to communicate that back to your care team, because you're at home, they don't know when you're having side effects and symptoms. So honesty around how you're doing and how you're feeling is so important. So I think, again, this comes back to communication and relationship with your care team, and making sure that you understand that your role in the care team is to articulate how the treatment and the disease is impacting on you, so that the care team can really do the best they can to support you on that journey. So that brings us into some of the common challenges that, regardless of what kind of cancer patients deal with, it is something that everybody who has a cancer diagnosis really needs to manage. And the first one is this feeling of being distressed. So distressed is really an umbrella term. It has lots of different things underneath it, but distress is just this sense of overwhelming anxiety that I can't cope, I can't handle everything that's going on. And distress kind of ratchets up as more and more problems come into our world. Our level of distress and our level of angst about living in the space that we're in becomes more and more pronounced. And so the feeling of distress, now, however you define it, that's the word we've put on it. It might be some other word that means this to you, but this sense of feeling like I cannot handle everything that's going on, it can be driven by many different issues and symptoms underneath it. So it can be driven by physical symptoms, such as like, I'm in pain. When I'm in pain, I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't focus on conversations, I can't do the things that I love to do, I can't go to work, I can't do this. And so all of these things, can accumulate to really bring this level of distress, which is way more than pain, but pain might be the root of where do we need to start in helping you get that manageability of your experience back to a place where you feel like you can cope with what's going on. And so pain, physical issues, social issues, like I don't know how to talk to my family, I don't want to feel like a burden, I don't know how to do these things. Emotional distress, like I'm afraid this disease is going to come back, I'm anxious, I'm don't know what the purpose of life is. I feel depressed. Practical issues. I can't pay my bills. I don't have a job anymore. I've run out of my savings account. I need to understand that. And then spiritual challenges, like, why the heck did this happen to me? What did I do wrong in life that this is what I have to deal with? So all of these things come under this umbrella of being distressed. And I think some degree of distress when faced with cancer and life with cancer is normal. But if that just level of distress gets to that higher level where we feel like life is so out of control, it becomes very disruptive and can affect your overall quality of life. And it looks different from person to person. So it is really a personal space of understanding there's a lot of things going on, and it may not feel like everything is about a piece of the cancer experience, but it's about how do all these pieces come together and really affect your ability to live a good life. So some of the common symptoms that really shine a light to say you probably need some professional help to manage this level of distress is really when you find yourself having a hard time, finding joy in everyday things. You're feeling sad or fearful all the time. You're irritable, you're angry. You start avoiding family and friends and conversations where people are going to ask you how you're feeling. Physical problems like poor appetite, weight loss, fatigue, you can't sleep, pain problems, all of those things are so important for you to communicate to your care team, whether it's your family doctor, whether it's your cancer care team, because there are things we can do to help you. So how to manage this distress as it starts to impact your ability to live a good life. So again, back to communication. We need you to share how you're doing with us and with your family and support system, because we can't understand all of the things that you're struggling with unless it's openly discussed. So unpacking what is the main driver of your distress may help us and your care team really get at how can we help some of these multiple issues that are going on come down. And so we try to get to the root cause. So like the example with pain, if we don't manage your pain, you're not going to we could give you something to help you sleep, but underlying the problem is the fact that you have this really chronic problem with ongoing pain. So it sometimes is about having some complex conversations around what's at the bottom. What is the thing that we could do that would make the best impact and difference for you on helping you cope? So again, back to that idea that we need to accept help, and feeling this way is common and needing help is common. Connecting with other cancer survivors can help you understand your experience in a way that no one else can. So I'm not saying that you have to rely on other survivors to help deal with your symptoms and your issues, but sometimes just knowing that this is something other people have struggled with, and there might be things that you can try in your own space to help yourself is helpful to know you're not alone. Joining a support group, getting counseling, talking with your care team. Those are the really core things if you're feeling really overwhelmed with that level of distress and the multiple things that are how everything seems to be stitched together, and overwhelming is super important. So I just want to share a video. In our cancer program here in Alberta, we have a program, or we use a standardized screening tool that every time cancer patients come to the cancer clinic, we ask them to fill out this form. And that form helps unpack all of the different things that are going on for our cancer patients. And it forms a foundation of a communication tool between you and your care team. And so this is Christy. She's one of our patients, and she took time out of her life to tell us about the importance of reporting your symptoms and that role in her experience. So I'm going to play this for you, and we can talk about it when we get to the end of the discussion, but happy to really talk about how this might be helpful in your environment.
My name's Christy Sainchuk. I was diagnosed with stage 2/3 breast cancer at the age of 36. I think what happens when you're going through treatment is there's this sense of, I just have to do whatever I have to do to get through the day. I did take note of how I was feeling during the 3 weeks between chemotherapies, but there's also like chemo brains. I would have a thought, oh, I should ask my doctor about this, and then all of a sudden it would be out of my head. Also, there's so much going on that I didn't really have a chance to like write it all down or really reflect on how I was feeling, but then I would fill out the distress form and it would jog my memory of like, oh yeah, I felt like this. I need to like ask the doctor about this, ask the nurses about this. I remember filling it out and going, this is helpful because it gave me like kind of like a guide. It also streamlined my thought process so that I wasn't going in with my head spinning. You hear about major things when you go through chemotherapy, like nausea, but it wasn't like the biggest symptom I had. My symptoms were more about like my mouth felt really awful all the time, my gums were really sore, my tongue felt awful. It was really painful, and that was one of the things on the form, and that took me to like the nurse, and the nurse would ask me about it, and then I got special mouthwash that helped me out and helped with some of the pain. Then when I was having a lot of pain, like obviously there's a scale on there that says how bad is your pain. And then when I was feeling sad and not feeling so great about life when I was going through my treatments, that also was brought up, and then I was kind of geared towards psychological services and the help that I needed there, which was has been very helpful for me. So there were days I felt better than others, and in weeks that I felt better than others. So I could actually kind of gauge my progress, like if I was feeling better or feeling worse. I felt like it kept everyone on the same page when I went in there. Like they all, like the nurse would leave with my sheet, and then the doctor would come in with the same sheet and go over what the nurse had talked to me about. I had 3 different oncologists because they were all going on mat leave, but I always felt like there was definitely, they were all on the same page and all asking me the right questions. Like I felt like I had really, really good care at the Cross.
So thanks for listening to that. I think Christy does a good job in just talking about how things come and go, symptoms, concerns, level of distress, the type of support we need, ebbs and flows across time, whether you're on treatment, in survivorship, after treatment. We can still be struggling even after treatment is over. I think that it's a misconception to think, well, once I get done treatment, I'm going to feel great, because that's not necessarily how it works. And so we need to continue the conversation, and using a standardized screening tool, like, or some way of ranking your symptoms or looking at all the possible symptoms, saying, nope, I don't have this one, but I do have this one. Nope, not having any problems here, is a helpful way for people to think through it. So if your care site doesn't use a tool like this, there is lots of like you could actually use it in your own environment, almost like a diary, to see how am I doing across these different domains, and what might I do for myself in between when I need to go for appointments. And so that's something I could work with Desiree and Leukemia Society to see if there's something that even at a very basic level that we make available for people, if this isn't something your care team actually uses, because not every care team does this. So I just wanted to put that out there. Next common challenge is fatigue. Fatigue is the #1 symptom that all cancer patients and survivors actually experience and struggle with. It's a very, it's different than general fatigue in that it doesn't go away if you sleep more. It just doesn't go away. It's a level of energy that is compromised because your body is dealing with so many other things internally. You can feel tired and weak or slow, worn out, don't have the energy to do the things you love or see the people you want to see. And it's usually worse during treatment, but it can last for months or years after you're done treatment. So definitely fatigue is a difficult symptom and challenge. And I think the important thing is that it's hard for healthcare teams to manage it, because much of fatigue management is about you taking steps to do the best you can and mitigate and improve those outcomes. So one of the things that we have done in Alberta, again, I only lead this program in Alberta, but we're going to make it available here, and Desiree's going to put it in the chat box. We have developed a cancer-related fatigue booklet, and it's a PDF booklet, so you can download it and then you can walk through it, but it has little videos embedded in it that help deal with all of the things that are on the screen. So what's on the screen is our curriculum that's in our fatigue management. So it talks about how to remain active. So one of the best ways to mitigate fatigue is actually having some level of activity. Going for a walk is one of the best things you can do for yourself. And I know that you've had discussions around exercise in your workshops, but being like, it doesn't have to be rigorous exercise, just doing something, going for a walk, being active. And if you can do that and make it something you love to do, so if it's like walking in nature, if that makes you feel better emotionally as well as physically, like that's a good win, because you're getting two things at the same energy output. Strategies to improve your sleep. So we go through all kinds of things about that. How to manage your stress. So how do you actually live in this space where you can't get rid of the fact that you're dealing with cancer, but you have to learn to live in that space. And so how do we help? What steps can you take to manage your stress? Eating a good diet, very important to feed your machine. Your body is your machine that's working really hard. So putting good nutrition in so that you have the best energy you can possibly have to get through your days. Pacing yourself, make good decisions. You can't do everything. If you don't have enough energy, you can't do everything. So what is really important to do, and how do you minimize other things so that you have enough energy to do the thing that is really important to you, so that you feel like you're still who you want to be in the world. Finding support, talking to others, and being patient with yourself. Feeling better takes time. And so this is all covered in the booklet. So I would encourage you all to have a look at that and go through the curriculum. It's a self-management curriculum. It also talks about when you need to talk to your care team. When your fatigue is so severe that you are not able to do the self-management, there may be medical management that's required. So another common challenge is really about fear that the cancer treatment won't work or that the cancer will come back. And having these fears is very common. It's another really common challenge that people who are living with this journey have to come to terms with, because no matter what we do, that fear, to some degree, we can never remove all risk that it could come back or that the treatment might not work. And so I think, again, knowing that, having that trusting relationship with your family doctor, regardless, or your cancer care team, to understand that someone's watching over you, that you have a good communication with your care team. If something is not feeling right, you have a question, you need to be able to have conversations about those fears. Participating in regular follow-up appointments and surveillance, be an active participant in understanding what surveillance you need, when you need to talk to your care team if things are not going well. Be your own advocate. Bringing your symptoms and challenges forward in that conversation is super important. Really accepting that your life has changed. So now thinking about, how do we pull all the things we've talked about into common points? So number one, you can't change that cancer's arrived. You can't change that you've had to be on treatment or have had treatment. So there is an acceptance that your life has changed, and it won't go back to exactly the way it was before, but it is possible to live well. Both, oh, here's my cat. I have cats. It's part of my living well. There is, a possibility that a new reality could be a good reality. There are ways to live well with and beyond cancer. But it does take energy and time and patience and commitment. So I think that's really the bottom line, is that we can, that's why we're talking about all these things, is it's not a lost cause. You can live well in this space. Learning to live with uncertainty is definitely part of this space. Fear and anxiety are normal parts of living well, and but that doesn't mean that you ignore it. So yes, it's normal, but if it becomes overwhelming and you can't deal, you feel distressed, then you need to talk to someone about that. And so I think I have 10 bullets to just wind out our conversation here and try to pull everything together from all the advice I've given you. Is number one, accept that cancer has something to teach you and that not all lessons that cancer teaches are bad. So 63% in a recent survey, 63% of cancer patients said that the disease had changed their life in some positive ways, even if it brought some challenges to their life. Coping skills gained by living with cancer are helpful in all aspects of your life. So if we think about fatigue management and the things we talked about there, those strategies around eating well, pacing yourself, exercising and being active, managing your stress, those are all life skills that will actually help in all aspects of you and your family's life. So there's some really healthy living strategies that you can take and build into what your day-to-day life looks like. Helping others living with the disease can help make sense of your own experience and give it a purpose. So I would encourage you to look for ways to give back if possible, if you have enough energy, talking with other people. Cancer does remind us to appreciate every day and to try to live to the fullest we can. And it reminds us that we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And something about living in the moment is super important to all of this too. And that's why knowing how to live the best you can in the moments of every day is so important. And it's worthwhile thinking about and giving it energy. Accept that everyone reacts to and manages life with and beyond cancer differently. So you will not have the same experience as somebody who is similar to you. Don't compare yourself to others. Your fatigue may last longer than someone else's. You may have more problems with something or other. There's no right way to do this. So the important thing is to find the support you need. And that looks different for everybody. So talking with someone eases the isolation that comes with this disease, understanding that you are unique and the supports you need are unique, tailored to who you are, comes out of you making sure that you know that it's your job on the care team to make sure people understand what you're struggling with. Familiarize yourself with signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety, because this really is a very real issue around the fear that the treatment won't work. What would happen to me then? What if it comes back? Those are really, really real things. And if you struggle with those, find help. There are people that can help you with that. Do your homework, be knowledgeable, understand what you're in the middle of, because the better you understand it, the better you can advocate for yourself. Build strong relationships with your care team, including your family doctor. Don't forget, you need a family doctor on this journey with you. That's really involved and helpful. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. This is a time in your life where you need to understand and be kind to yourself. There is lots going on for you. And really take the time to track your symptoms and your medical journey, because it'll help you know when you need more help, when you're getting better, when you're getting worse, when you need to talk to somebody. And it also helps your family see what you're struggling with. So there's lots of benefits to actually tracking symptoms over time. So as I close out this conversation with you, I want to just leave you with this words to live by, that this is really about having the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can and to do the work in that space, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I think that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I will take down my presentation and open it up for questions and comments.
Wonderful. I'm going to have you put the slideshow back up when we're done questions. No, we'll go through the questions. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Watson, for sharing your expertise and insight with all of us today. I always learn something new every time I hear you speak. So it is now time for our question and answer period. If you haven't already done so, be sure to use the question box in your Zoom webinar panel to type in your questions. It's located at the bottom of your screen there. It's best to use that instead of the chat box, just so we don't lose your question. We'll do our best to get to as many as possible. And if we don't get to your question today, one of our community service leads will follow up with you. So we did have a couple questions come in prior to the session. So we'll start with a couple of those as people are typing away. First one, I was diagnosed in 2013 and on Opdivo since 2016. I'm a single mom and I'm really tired, but I'm also too scared to date anyone. Any tips on that?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great, I think it comes down to management of fatigue. And, I think what I was saying in that session is really what's most important to you. And really, if finding a way to, have some fun outside the home, meet someone who you can share an experience with, if that is something that is an important step to you, even though you're tired and have lots of other things going on, then it's about prioritizing and pacing yourself so you have time and energy to do that. I think there's also a lot of emotional issues around, should I get in another relationship? I'm scared. What if something goes wrong and now I'm in a relationship, and all of those things. So again, I would also encourage you to talk to a relationship counselor, like in the counseling space, because there is lots of complexity in the survivorship phase of really, how do I re-engage and trust that my health is really stable into the future, and I can actually trust that I would be around to have this conversation and this relationship. So I think it depends on what's underlying, if it's because you don't have enough energy or you're afraid intimacy again. So I think I would highly encourage you to talk to some form of counselor about that.
Perfect. You talked a lot about fatigue. How would you make suggestions for persistent fatigue and emotional downs, like your top 3, I think, resources or tips to help with that?
That's awesome. So I think persistent fatigue is where this self-management resource that I was sharing is so important, because there are things that you can do in your own life if you can't get rid of fatigue, how do you live the best you can given that you are fatigued? And so, often you can explain it as almost like an energy bank. It's like we have to make deposits into the bank so we can take something out when we want to use energy. And I think that fatigue is like your bank account gets lower, and it feels like I don't have any reserves left to do the things I want to do that are really important to me. So thinking about, if I have to make a decision, what's the most important thing for me to use my energy on? And then asking for help, like maybe going grocery shopping is the least important, but you need food. So maybe there's a way that you can use an online grocery shopping service or have a friend deliver that, so that you don't have to expend your energy doing those mundane tasks because you want to do this thing like spend time with your grandchildren or whatever that is. So I think that would be a really strongly encourage you to take a look at pacing yourself section of the resource guide. And in terms of feeling down, I think that it is normal, but if it's making you, if you can't bounce back from it, so there's some strategies to help yourself when you're feeling down. So engaging in telling your own story, finding a place where you can share your experience, even if it's not a counseling space, but like even talking about your own experience is a therapeutic. So when you're feeling down, that's a valuable thing. So that open communication. But if you find yourself in that you're more down than up, and that you're having these persistent problems around, like, I feel like I'm avoiding people, I don't want to be in conversations, I can't face things, I'm having trouble sleeping, like those are more like you probably might need some medical management, because some of the anti-anxiety, antidepressant medications are so helpful. So sometimes we just need that to get through and to manage those. So that would be my advice.
Wonderful. A couple questions related to isolation. So I have now had blood cancer for 13 years. diagnosed with multiple different types of blood cancers. Moving on, I want to be involved in my life, but because I'm so immunocompromised, I cannot. Suggestions. So I was forced to retire 15 years early, and this has really impacted us. And I feel like I've been left behind while my family and friends live on in the way that they want to.
Mhm. Yeah, so I guess my thought is the world has changed so much since COVID. So I guess it just, and I don't know what the unique realities of this individual are, but there are so many ways to have a relationship and to contribute, even volunteering or even working in a remote environment now that never existed before. That if there is So if you have enough energy to participate in these kinds of online experiences, there are so many ways that even though you might need to maintain social isolation or like physical distance because you are at risk of getting sick because of the world and the germs in the world and the exposure to other things, there are many, many more ways to feel like you can get that social connection or even, contribute in some way through remote engagement like this. So I think that would be my encouragement is I know it's weird, like feeling like I could go to a support group online feels like a weird thing, but what I've heard from our cancer patients, because we've put all of our support groups online in Alberta in the cancer program, we're even doing like counseling appointments online, and patients are actually saying, as long as I feel like I have a relationship with the counselor online, like, and we can see each other, that it actually is quite therapeutic, and that you can achieve this space of feeling like my cup is full after a digital encounter, even though it's not the same as a personal face-to-face encounter. So I would say be hopeful, find new ways to engage in the world around you, and finding a way, sometimes contributing, even if it's a small thing, anything you can do, like even just sharing your story, joining a group, doing something that gives you a sense of purpose can help. So that's what I would say.
Wonderful. Related to that, somebody wrote in and said, I'm hearing a lot this week about eating healthy and seeking help on mental health is always highlighted about how important they are, but not always accessible without being very expensive. Are there options or other options available for this, maybe through the LSC or ones that you know of?
It's a great question. So I am working quite closely with family doctors here in Alberta, and the biggest thing that I have heard from my family doctor colleagues is that about 70% of the work they do is mental health. And they really encouraged me to make sure that our cancer patients realize that mental well-being is something your family doctor needs to know about and can help connect you to. So sometimes in Alberta anyways, we have what's called primary care networks, and in primary care networks, they have counseling services embedded in primary care networks. So if you were to talk to your family doctor about needing to talk to someone about whatever the issues are, they often do have free resources that they can refer you to start that process. So I think that would be my first recommendation, is talk to your family doctor, talk to your cancer care team, because there are services in the cancer programs to support emotional well-being. I think sometimes it's harder to get into those because you have to have a certain level of distress. And then the next piece I would say is that there's a lot of mental health well-being that can be supported through community agencies. So I think about the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, I think about Wellspring, I think about Canadian Cancer Society. There is different levels of support people need for mental health. And the first level of support is a sense of community and a sense of shared experience. And that doesn't need to be necessarily a professional. So start where you are and then work up from there if your needs are not being met.
Wonderful. It looks like we have one last question. If anyone else has anything, I encourage you to type it into that Q&A box, but it looks like this one might be our last one. Any suggestions on how to reshape one's identity post-cancer?
Oh, yeah.
Previously, I was very active outdoors, snowshoeing, swimming, kayaking, etc. It was a very key part of how I saw myself. I'm not sure who I am anymore without that big part of my life. I limit my activities because of fatigue and risk of falls. My balance seems to have been compromised, and the chemo brain leads me to making foolish mistakes.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's so true. So sometimes I hear this a lot from people who are in the survivorship phase of their cancer experience, in that, I thought that if I could just get through all the treatments, I would feel all better and my life would go back to normal. And it just never goes back to the same normal. So I think that that's where the personal work sits, in that, like what I walked us through today about the reluctance of acceptance. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy to accept that things are different, and you wish it wasn't different, and you grieve for the life that you used to have and the things you used to be able to do. And your body feels like it has let you down because you don't have the energy to do the things that really fill your cup. So if that is your reality and you're really unable to do the things that you want to do, I would find different ways to do parts of what you enjoy to do. So there are, I don't know how significant your compromise is, but even going for shorter walks out in the fresh air, like maybe it's not hiking a mountain, but it's in a path that is flat and you can be in the midst of nature. Pacing yourself, taking small incremental steps to build your capacity up to do something that's really important again. Understanding that there's many ways to be a valuable member of society and to fill your own cup. So, maybe you don't get to go to the top of a mountain and see the vista and feel like that sense of like, the world is an amazing place and here I am at the peak of this mountain seeing this amazing thing. But there are ways to have that experience of that might look different. So, pick up a hobby like painting that vista, or find ways to have another way to find purpose. And I think honestly, that's the hardest part of coming out the other side of this experience and thinking like, I need to rebuild my life. I need to figure out who I am. And I cannot change what I can't change. I can't change I had cancer. I can't change that I don't have as much energy as I used to, or I have balance problems, or I am immunocompromised and can't go out the way I used to, or whatever. So what can I change? What is in my scope of control? And sometimes we need creative help to be in that space because it's hard to reimagine, but there are ways to find a new normal that can be meaningful, even if it's quite different than our past. But it's not easy. So I would say, really, there are some things you can do on your own, but then there are others that you really do need to have that expert advice and counseling support to overcome that existential, like, who am I and what's my purpose on this world? Because it's not what it used to be, or I can't contribute or participate in the same way. It's a very real experience, but there is no easy fix. Sorry.
Oh. We've had 3 questions pop in, but we only have time for one more.
Okay.
Sorry for those last 2 that just came in. So the last one we'll ask is, I was diagnosed with CLL in July 2020, and I'm in the watch and wait stage or active surveillance. My numbers are increasing, but no treatment at this time. What can I do to not make worry take over about the what ifs?
Yeah. I feel like a bit of a broken record in that, like, this what ifs is so real. It can become so encompassing that so there's some self-help books about living with uncertainty, like, depending on where you are in that spectrum, start with like, what is in my control to do? So is it that I need more information, is there books, is there workshops, is there groups I can join where this is something we're going to talk about? or am I at a level where this is compromising my ability to cope with my world and I actually need professional support? Because fear of reoccurrence is a very, very real thing. Fear of, like, not even reoccurrence, but fear of progression, especially in that watch and wait, when you know you're kind of just like waiting to see what your body is going to do. There's that sense of like not being in control. So I think that I would recommend starting with like understanding, is there something I can do to help myself, which might be self-help or books or, you know, participating and talking to others. But know that if it is something that is really difficult for you, you need to step it up to that higher level of support and ask for help from a professional.
Wonderful. Can I get you to share the slides?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
For those of you that we weren't able to get to your questions, your community services lead can follow up with you. But before we sign off today, I would like to mention that we have 2 more presentations being offered this week as part of the Your Life After Cancer conference series. Cancer and Work, Tools and Resources to Help and Support You, which will be held later today. And tomorrow's session is Living Well with and Beyond Cancer, the Vital Role of Physical Activity. It's not too late to register for either of those. You can visit bloodcancers.ca to learn more about those upcoming sessions and to register if you are interested. We would like to thank Kite, Gilead Company, and Pfizer for making the Your Life After Cancer conference possible. And next slide, please. And finally, remember that we are here for you. You can reach us by email, by visiting our website, bloodcancer.ca, or by calling toll-free. Please note that a short survey will be sent to all participants after this presentation. Please take a moment to respond to help us plan beneficial events for you in the near future. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today, and take care.
Thanks for letting me be part of your day.
Thank you.